Seated. Proceedings are resumed. Madam Clerk.
Private member motion number 21 of 2015-16, amendment to the Health Services Authority Law 2010 revision, to be moved by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the first elected member for West Bay.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I consider the contents of the motion well debated, and I'm satisfied that my points are taken and that the records on what the bill consists of is in the records. So this late in the day, I'm going to withdraw that motion. No. Benefit for what, Premier?
The question is that private members' motion number 21 of 2015-2016 be withdrawn. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Motion 21 of 2015-2016 is withdrawn.
Private members motion number 26 of 2015-16, motion on electronic clearing, to be moved by the fourth elected member for Bordentown.
Recognize the fourth elected member from the District of Bordentown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to move private members motion number 26, 2015-2016, motion on electronic clearings, which reads as follows. Whereas the Banks and Trust Companies Law 2013 revision provides for the granting of licenses to operate retail banks in the Cayman Islands by the Monetary Authority, and whereas the current method used by retail banks in the Cayman Islands to clear and settle interbank transactions is currently a manual process and involves a lengthy waiting period for local interbank transactions to be cleared and settled, and whereas the extended waiting period experienced for the clearing of interbank transactions within the Cayman Islands serves to negatively impact the cash flow and purchasing power of local businesses, and whereas it has been recognized that the implementation of an electronic funds transaction clearing system would positively impact the cash flow and market reaction of local businesses by eliminating the lengthy waiting period required for payment clearing and an even longer delay of paper checks are being sent through the domestic mail service. And whereas an electronic clearing system would allow local businesses to initiate business-to-business transactions with almost instant funds availability. And whereas an electronic funds clearing system would allow for an increased volume in online transactions and local e-commerce transactions, be it therefore resolved that the government considers an amendment to the Banks and Trust Companies Law 2013 revision in order to require the use of electronic funds clearing and settlement by all Cayman Islands registered retail banks for the purpose of settling and clearing local interbank transactions.
Is there a seconder?
Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion, so it will be put by the member from Bordentown. Thank you.
The motion has been duly moved and is now open for debate. Does the Honourable Member from Bordentown wish to speak to his motion?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I would. Madam Speaker, as contained in the resolve section of my motion, I'm seeking to, in layman's terms, ask the government to consider making it mandatory for local banks, local retail banks, to implement a electronic clearing system in order to clear and settle transactions done between banks, either initiated by the bank themselves or their customers. Madam Speaker, I think that this motion is relatively straightforward, but it seeks to improve the retail banking infrastructure that is in place here in the Cayman Islands. And I believe that Cayman now lags behind many developed countries in this area in terms of having an electronic clearing mechanism in place. I was reading on Wikipedia, Madam Speaker, that in 26 countries of the European Union, they have already adopted such systems. And in 1985, whereas only 3 central banks had actually implemented an electronic clearing system worldwide, at the end of 2005, that had grown to 90 central banks. There can be no doubt, Madam Speaker, that there are many benefits to gain from having such a system in place, not only for the banks and the customers, but also for the local economy. As I mentioned earlier, Madam Speaker, Cayman, I think, lags behind most developed nations in this front, and it is something that I think has to be addressed with some urgency, because it does impact the volume of business that is conducted in this country, and it does have a tremendous impact on local businesses, in particular small businesses. Some of these impacts are from a liquidity point of view, Madam Speaker, where businesses are unable to make use of payments that they've received for a delayed amount of time. And it also impacts individual consumers who are not able to make instant payments. And in particular, an area that really concerns me is that it will impact and slow down the growth of e-commerce development in the Cayman Islands. When companies are unable to implement solutions effectively that allow business-to-business transactions or sale of goods and services other than via a POS terminal and a physical presence, it does have a negative effect on the uptake of e-commerce. And I think this is something that has to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Madam Speaker, most countries have now implemented proven and reliable electronic clearing systems. And a lot of these are hosted either by a central clearing house or hosted by a third party or at a central bank. Some of them have gone as far as to allow international payments. I know there may be some concern and implications for that. But the development in this area has far outpaced us. And I think if the Cayman Islands wants to keep pace with other jurisdictions, this is a mandatory move for us. And I think if we don't treat it as such, we are not going to be able to benefit economically. And it is going to stifle the development of business here. I think it has been stifling the development of business here, Madam Speaker. Not having such a system in place has many economical repercussions that I will talk about as I present this motion. Madam Speaker, the government has implemented a number of programs to assist small businesses in general, by introducing reduced fees and breaks on government taxes. And I think this complements that effort and would demonstrate to small businesses in particular that the government is concerned about the issues that impact their day-to-day business operations. I think, Madam Speaker, before I go into the flesh of my presentation here, I need to explain a term so that everyone understands one of the issues, the most prominent issues involved in not having an electronic clearings platform in place. And that is to understand what is meant by the term float. This normally happens, Madam Speaker, when an individual pays another individual using a paper check. This check is then deposited at the recipient's bank in their bank account. And the bank normally marks those funds as uncleared. The check is then cleared with the payer's bank, and the funds are then made available in the recipient's bank account. Typically, as we've experienced here, Madam Speaker, what happens here is that there's a delay of up to 4 days between that check first being deposited and the recipient actually being able to use those funds. That is considered the float. And this even extends, to my surprise, to local bank drafts. I remember back when bank drafts were considered cash. Now, you deposit a bank draft in your account, and it can take almost the same amount of time. I know that other banks in other jurisdictions have been accused of making use of these funds while they're in that state of float, where the funds are not credited to the depositor, but the bank invests those funds. And during that space of time, the interest earned on those funds goes to the bank, not the depositor. I don't know if that is the case here. But as a member across the floor is telling me, he believes it is the case. And it is extremely unfair, Madam Speaker, that this if this is the practice, that this is being done to the detriment of our local depositors, especially small businesses who struggle day to day, Madam Speaker, just to get new business and keep their businesses going. And it is, Madam Speaker, quite likely that a customer could make a claim that there is a loss of interest through this process to them as a depositor, and that the bank is actually reaping the benefit of their funds. So, Madam Speaker, any gap between the day of the debit and the day of the credit actually has the effect of reducing the income, the potential income that could be earned by the depositor. And I know, Madam Speaker, that the argument is that interest rates are low, and the interest might be even negligible. However, those funds could have been used for some other purpose. And there are other investment vehicles out there that do pay higher rates of interest that I'm sure a bank would have access to. So when these funds are in transit between bank accounts, the bank has the potential for reaping the benefit of those funds, all of the retail banks, rather than the person that was intended to benefit. And as I said, Madam Speaker, there's an opportunity cost involved here to the payee. Because as those funds become tied up in this float, this period of float, the funds cannot be used or invested, used in purchases, or meeting daily operational costs of the business and expenditures. And again, it's to the benefit of the bank and not to the customer. I know that there will be some objections thrown out to say that the cost of implementing an electronic clearing platform may be prohibitive as it will be a huge upfront expenditure, or they will say it's a huge upfront expenditure. But, Madam Speaker, it is clear that this is just a one-off investment, and that one-off investment can be offset over time by a continuous flow of benefits to the bank's customers. And anyone who runs a business here knows the value of retaining customers and keeping customers happy. Improving your service to your customers over time will far outweigh any upfront infrastructure costs and investment in a system such as this. Annually, Madam Speaker, the sum of these small benefits to your customers will provide a real cost benefit that can justify this one-off cost. In addition, Madam Speaker, the flows of benefits are perpetual, and over time, any such investment will pay for itself. Madam Speaker, improvements in clearing times will definitely facilitate and pave the way for transactions now that are possible but difficult. I've identified three primary types of transactions, Madam Speaker. Bulk credits, such as payroll credits, which normally banks will require that you submit those with a few days advance notice prior to the processing date. These could actually be reduced to, this advance notice could actually be reduced to a few hours if you were doing things electronically. And direct debits, Madam Speaker, where the recipient of the funds is given authority to request the funds. So things like utility payments. If direct debits are combined with electronic clearings, you could have third parties who set up invoicing and billing systems, Madam Speaker, where bills are presented online and the biller can actually request the funds from your account. I know that some companies now, to a limited extent, do direct debit. I think Flow does direct debit. But these, again, are paper-based. Things are not happening electronically and instantaneously. Standing orders as well can be facilitated through similar mechanism where member-to-member transactions, for example, one customer at one bank, customer at another bank can transfer funds on a preset date and time. Normally, Madam Speaker, these types of transactions are restricted to customers who are using the same bank. This can be expanded to allow customers at different banks to initiate standing orders. And if you think about this, the benefit of this is that all of us pay loan payments once a month, but we don't always have our loan account at the same bank where our payroll is deposited. So what we have to do is either ask the payroll department to directly deposit the funds at the bank where you have your loan, or you have to write a check from one account, go over to the bank where your loan has been approved and make the payment directly there via check or cash. The convenience there, Madam Speaker, is that you could online, through the online banking interface provided to you by your bank, send a payment, and not a wire transfer, but a payment, an electronic payment, to your account at the other bank. Another benefit, Madam Speaker, is that situations where banks are closed Friday to Monday morning, where this has an impact of slowing down business on the weekends because persons are not able to access their banking facilities if they need to do interbank transactions. You can go to the ATM, or you could initiate a wire transfer that will leave on Monday morning. But you can't make a payment, deposit a payment to an account at another bank. That's true. Even if you make a deposit at the ATM for your current bank, it doesn't get credited until the next working day, next business day. Having an electronic clearing system in place will allow solutions that allow you to move funds between banks, even during times when the bank is closed. When a speaker, once a system is in place, it is a reasonable expectation that the number of users will increase, as will the volume of transactions. This has been the trend worldwide. Once a country adopts electronic clearings and allows bank-to-bank transactions with no or little or no float time, the adoption of online transactions dramatically increases. And it becomes even more popular for smaller transactions because the fees associated with these transactions are nowhere near as high as the fees associated with, say, a wire transfer. Madam Speaker, if you just consider the convenience of the reduced time in funds clearing, this will definitely attract a much higher volume of users and transactions just for the convenience. Madam Speaker, most banks already have card transactions and POS terminals set up with merchants, and these would not be affected by the implementation of an online clearing system. But we have to consider smaller businesses who may not be able to afford the cost of making use of merchant terminals. Because the way these terminals operate, a percentage of the transaction is normally the fee that you pay for using them, Madam Speaker. And for a small business, that cost will add up. And it may make such a solution too expensive for a small business to swallow. Electronic clearings will also, as I said earlier, add to the convenience for the customers in being able to execute payments for urgent payments, emergency payments that normally would have to wait until the bank is actually physically open. Madam Speaker, when compared to the use of drafts or checks, electronic transactions will significantly reduce the need for cash. And we know that many businesses now are complaining about the fact that the increased number of robberies makes them nervous about having to handle cash, especially on weekends. And many of those opportunist criminals are targeting businesses because they know that there are specific time periods when they will have significant amounts of cash on hand. These sorts of solutions eliminate the need to have that cash on hand, and funds can transfer from bank account to bank account. As I said, Madam Speaker, implementing an electronic clearing solution will make possible in specific situations where urgent transactions or emergency transactions are required, things like rent payments or even food payments, importers having to import goods and pay other companies for delivery and so forth, or transfer of funds to a close relative or friend who may have an emergency, payment of a bill to avoid penalty fees, wage payments for individuals who are paid maybe by monthly or weekly, where non-cash payment would likely incur a delay in funds clearing again if you pay them by check. Or even a business that who has to pay a supplier for a time-critical component, thinking about the auto shops, or even urgent materials that are needed by a business when there is no established credit arrangement with the supplier. Madam Speaker, transfer of funds to ensure an opportunity is not lost, for example, purchasing a vehicle or asking someone to hold a vehicle before you purchase it, or even payment for a purchase that requires delivery when the funds are cleared. In all of these examples, Madam Speaker, the time to complete the transaction and get on with the business is dramatically reduced. There are also opportunities, Madam Speaker, to reduce the cost of transactions to the payer by eliminating card fees and reducing the need for small businesses and individuals to even have a credit card. As I said earlier, some businesses may not be able to afford to have credit cards. The high interest on credit cards makes it really nonsensical to try to operate a business using a credit card. But some payers may not actually have a good credit rating or a good enough credit rating to have a credit arrangement with a bank. And then, Madam Speaker, in cases where the payee requires immediate access to funds or immediate liquidity, or at least a credit guarantee, electronic payments via electronic clearing and settlement will meet those requirements. Madam Speaker, it is also clear that faster payment will reduce the need to ask for credit guarantees and again speed up the pace of business so that business owners can get on with running their business and not have to worry about the financing and liquidity issues. But Madam Speaker, what I've touched on earlier was what I see is the slow uptake of e-commerce solutions. I do see some businesses getting involved in business-to-business transactions and what I consider e-commerce, but the uptake has been slow. And I think as one of the leading financial centers in the world, we should be leading the way. We should be paving the way in this area. And I do think that the banking infrastructure is to blame. What does exist now? I've seen many companies locally actually implement solutions where they're able to take payments online and conduct online transactions or receive funds electronically. But they are actually piggybacking on solutions that are not based in the jurisdiction. Because there's no mechanism here, Madam Speaker, for the funds to actually settle and clear without going out of the jurisdiction and back in. Other countries tend to benefit through transaction fees, and it increases the cost to the businesses. Just use an example of a website that's selling products. If you want to set up your website where you can sell products online, oftentimes the payment gateway used is actually taking your transaction out of the country and back in using another country's banking system. And of course, yes, I'm reminded, and these transactions are actually conducted in US dollars. Madam Speaker, a system such as this would also eliminate or reduce the need to use paper checks, which, as we all know, are a manual way of making payments, cumbersome, and probably cost more to process than they're worth. And customers who rely on faster clearing times, I think, Madam Speaker, a business case can be made to say that they will pay for the convenience of having the service. And this is an area that retail banks here can actually compete over. So it allows the banks as well to enhance their service offerings and become more competitive in the services that they offer to their clients. Madam Speaker, businesses nowadays have to increasingly do payments between what I call business-to-business payments. There are companies here who rely on other companies to supply them with their inventory. And there is an issue because of the delay with funds being tied up in float, where businesses are not able to properly manage their inventory. And I'm not thinking about the larger businesses who have a high level of liquidity. I'm talking about smaller and mid-sized businesses who struggle sometimes to have funds available to replenish inventory. Having such a system in place where a business has received funds from clients, payments from clients, and they don't have to wait for those payments to clear, those funds are immediately available for them to conduct their business operations and do things like replenish inventory when they need it, rather than having to wait for the check to clear, Madam Speaker, which may be days later. So, Madam Speaker, by providing a mechanism to reduce float time, I think this is another area where banks can compete for customers. If one bank's float time is 3 days and another one is 2, quite naturally, customers will gravitate towards the one with the lower float time. It will keep the banks honest, and it will force them to compete at a higher level for customers, which is what we want. Madam Speaker, this definitely will reduce cash flow uncertainty for small businesses. I know many small business owners, Madam Speaker, who on a weekly basis struggle to meet payroll. They're calling the bank, asking them to honor checks that have been deposited but haven't cleared. They're borrowing funds, or they're using funds that they've gotten as deposits on jobs where they should be buying material. They're using those funds to meet payroll, hoping that when checks that they have in their account clear, then they can make up the difference there. And is this liquidity concern that mostly impacts small businesses? I think you talk to a majority of small business owners that struggle, Madam Speaker, to compete for the business that the larger companies are getting, that are not getting. What we would consider, the crumbs sometimes that fall from the table. They're involved, Madam Speaker, in trying to keep their businesses running, meeting their commitments, keeping their clients happy. And this definitely does have a significant impact on them. I know many small business owners who go to pains to try to keep their business running, but complain bitterly about this situation. And with the high, Madam Speaker, with the high failure rate of startup businesses, anything that we can do to assist them in keeping their businesses operating and allowing them to be able to take advantage of increased liquidity, I think we have an obligation to do. Cash flow management, Madam Speaker, is a key concern for all business owners, but in particular those small businesses that we rely on to employ Caymanians and who means so much to our local economy, I think would benefit tremendously from the introduction of electronic clearings. Another area, Madam Speaker, is companies who specialize in the supply of perishable goods. These companies will benefit significantly from having better inventory control. They are able to more rapidly respond to the demand for their goods and able to replenish inventory without having again to wait for checks to clear, funds to become available. Madam Speaker, I think as a jurisdiction, we need to promote the introduction of electronic clearings. I know that the Bankers Association has talked about it for a number of years now. I'm not sure exactly where they have ended up, but I have not seen any solutions come forward. And it is hurting the local economy, and it is hurting local businesses. And I think this could be a simple fix to a lot of the headaches that are faced by local businesses, Madam Speaker, and something that the government should consider and support. I'm looking at the Minister for Financial Services, but he's not giving an indication that he would support it, but I'll give him an opportunity to state his case and his position. So, Madam Speaker, this is a pretty straightforward motion. I don't think that much can be said to the contrary, that it is something that we should adopt and we should be using. We need to keep pace with developments in technology. We need to keep pace with the developing world. And we need to make sure, Madam Speaker, that the consumers of the businesses that we license are getting good value for money and getting the benefit of the technology that should be available to them. I hope that I've properly laid out some of the facts that should be considered and a lot of the benefits. And I look forward, Madam Speaker, to hearing from all honorable members of this House and hope that they will support this motion. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable Minister responsible for financial services.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the motion moved by the fourth elected member from Boddentown, number 26 of 2015-16, the motion on electronic clearings, deals with an issue that the government has certainly been in discussion with the banks on for a couple of years now. Madam Speaker, the mover has certainly laid out a lot of the benefits and the rationale behind electronic clearings. And I think what he has outlined is really two distinct things. Perhaps he wasn't necessarily that clear in how he did it, but we're talking about electronic funds transfers and then separately the clearing of checks through an automated electronic process. Madam Speaker, as a member noted, moving the motion, his contribution. The government has been concerned about ensuring that the business environment is well supported, and in particular, small businesses are well supported in this country. And, Madam Speaker, I think probably for the past 2 decades or so, there have been attempts to set up some kind of electronic clearing platform. I remember quite well sometime within that sort of time frame that I was asked to give some advice by a particular service provider that was seeking to do just that. I do recall that there were a lot of issues. There were technology driven challenges, and there was significant cost elements involved at that time. No doubt economics has continued to be an issue, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, it is necessary for us to be able to, as a modern country, modern economy, to be able to take advantage of solutions which are provided to us by technology-based platforms. For all the reasons the member has noted. I don't think, Madam Speaker, it's so much an issue of an opportunity cost in terms of returns on money that ends up in the banking system through the current sort of inefficient process, relatively speaking. But it definitely is an issue of cash flow restrictions. And anything we can do to help small businesses address that sort of issue, Madam Speaker, should be done. And that's precisely why we have been engaged with the banks, through the Bankers Association in particular, Madam Speaker, in discussions on this point. Madam Speaker, I note that the member had commented in the press recently that that those discussions had occurred, and that I in particular had indicated that the system was supposed to be in place, I think he said September last year. I don't remember the time frame I had indicated to the member, but certainly, Madam Speaker, these discussions had occurred previously, particularly over the last year or so. And I did indicate, based on the representations I had made to me, that the banks were working on this issue collectively, and were seeking to put in place the necessary mechanisms. Certainly, in my mind, based on the representations made to me at the time, I was thinking that it would be by the end of 2015 at the latest, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, there are challenges in implementing this. Of course, one of the issues is that the Cayman Islands dollar is not a tradable currency. And I think the member mentioned the electronic payment platforms through which much of the existing e-commerce occurs in the Cayman Islands today. And of course, those are US dollar-based transactions. So they do take advantage of the established international electronic payment platforms. So if we're talking about US dollars, Madam Speaker, there are existing mechanisms, and we can send money from one bank to another in Cayman as well, albeit we have to go a bit of a circuitous route of having to go through basically the New York banking system to get funds back in the Cayman. So our challenge, Madam Speaker, is to make sure that we have a platform in place that can be dual currency, can both service CI dollar transactions as well as US dollar transactions. And those two facilities will give us the best possible advantages for our economy, for our businesses that are operating within it. Madam Speaker, I should also say that, you know, businesses do need to be aware of the realities of the business world, the inefficiencies within the banking system, and the fact that they need to have sufficient capital available to be able to meet their needs. So if a business is working on the position that it needs instant payment of its receivables in order to meet its payables, then that is a business that is in some difficulties. But Madam Speaker, be that as it may, the reality is that if we can put in place, if we can have an electronic payment system and a clearing system in Cayman, then that adds that much more benefit to the operation of our businesses in this economy and growth in commerce. So there is tremendous potential in that respect, and we must continue to seek that. And Madam Speaker, that's, as I said, that's why we have been engaged in discussions with the banks over the past couple of years on this particular issue. Madam Speaker, I think it's fair to note that certainly there have been technology-based improvements. I think even the mover of the motion noted that, for example, you can do bill payments within particular banks. All of our 6 clearing banks today, Madam Speaker, have an online presence. So you can do electronic funds transfers within that bank. So you can do an intra-bank transfer from one account to another, or if they have a program such as many of the banks do have today, where vendors can register with them and set up trading accounts to receive payments, then you can do a lot of bill payments through each individual, through your own particular bank and its online system. But that's only part of the solution. That is available. As I said, they've all got that facility now. I think there's varying degrees of penetration with the vendors who sign up to the banks in respect to that. But certainly that is something that is available, and it does make a big difference in terms of converting receivables into paid receivables. And that means a big difference in terms of cash flow for businesses generally. And of course, Madam Speaker, we do have the debit card facility now as well, which allows banks to participate in this program. I think it's run through the Visa payment mechanism, and I believe that is coordinated by one particular bank. All the other banks pay that particular bank to operate that system. But again, that's something that allows electronic payments or through the card at the point of sale. So all of that, Madam Speaker, has actually significantly reduced the volumes of checks that are in circulation that require to be cleared. And of course, Madam Speaker, the more that happens, the greater the reduction is. So if we were to have a full electronic payments platform today or tomorrow, which allows the payment allows you to go online on your bank system and make a payment to another bank. So your vendor's account in another bank, that has 2 benefits. One is it means that there's almost instant payment and receipt of that money. And secondly, it's reducing the need for the checks and the manual processing of those. Madam Speaker, in the context of an automatic check clearing as well, that requires all of the banks to have agreed on a consistent check format as well. They've got to have a consistent format, same size. They've got to have the codes set up in the right way so that the electronic system can read it. So I say all that, Madam Speaker, to say that that is the direction that the banks here are moving in. I will say that at this point, both from my conversations with the Monetary Authority recently, who have been in discussions with the clearing banks, who have been brought up to date by the clearing banks periodically on their progress with this project, and in my conversations with representatives from the Bankers Association. Madam Speaker, I can say that all 6 of the clearing banks, that is Royal Bank of Canada, Bank of Nova Scotia, Cayman National, Fidelity, Butterfield, did I miss any? First Caribbean, yes, thank you. They have now signed, I think as of last month, early last month, I think they have signed a memorandum of understanding which has then led to that consortium appointing or entering into a contract with a Barbados-based entity called PRISM. And Madam Speaker, that entity actually runs the electronic funds transfer, or EFT, platform for the banking system in Barbados, and also does the automatic check clearing, electronic check clearing. Madam Speaker, I think that's a significant improvement on where they were in terms of trying to do things on their own. My understanding is that PRISM will be making recommendations to the group of banks, the clearing banks, within the coming few months on the exact type of platform that they need with the particular type of software that they need. So it's acting essentially as a consultant at this point, and I think the intention is that they become the managing entity to operate this electronic funds transfer and automatic check clearing platform. Madam Speaker, my understanding is that they will be based, that entity will have an operation in the Cayman Islands. It will hire everybody locally to operate the facility. So there will certainly be the added benefit of maybe a half dozen jobs at least created in the local economy with this platform being operated there. As I said earlier, Madam Speaker, one of the challenges is that we needed to have a dual currency platform, dual currency software. Most countries don't operate a dual currency system, but we, of course, are a significant dual currency economy, both Cayman Islands dollars and US dollars. And as I said earlier, of course, the Cayman Islands dollar isn't a tradable currency. So that has to be unique to us here through this platform. Madam Speaker, in terms of the timing, I am being told by the representatives from the Bankers Association that this platform, that they are seeking to have the EFT, or the electronic funds transfer aspect of this platform, in place by the first quarter of 2017. 3 months approximately thereafter, Madam Speaker, they are seeking to have the automatic check clearing in place at that point. As I said earlier, Madam Speaker, if we have an electronic funds transfer platform in place, that will very significantly reduce the amount of checks that are required to be processed through the automatic check clearing system. And I think that's why, or that's one of the reasons why the consortium of banks have agreed, the clearing banks, to be clear, have agreed that priority. They will go with the electronic funds transfer first. There is already, as I said, Madam Speaker, platforms that can work through, in the sense that each of the banks now have, they all now have online systems where you can do intra-bank transfers. And what this will put in place is a platform then through which you can do inter-bank transfers. So you can go from one bank to another. And as I said, Madam Speaker, that will be extremely convenient, certainly address the issues that the member very well described in his moving of the motion. Madam Speaker, that is something that we are very much looking forward to, and certainly as the Minister for Financial Services and the Minister responsible for Commerce, that is an area and an issue that I will continue to be focused on. I will continue to push and get regular updates in respect of this project. But I think, Madam Speaker, it's certainly one which is needed now. It's the right time. Perhaps it could have been done a year ago, but clearly, given all the circumstances, given the fact that they have all of the 6 clearing banks now have this significant online presence and electronic platform to do their own internal things, transfers, now we can just extend that out with this platform, its new platform. And we will certainly ensure that there is ongoing progress, and I will try my best to ensure that the timelines that have been indicated to me, which I think are reasonable. I wouldn't say that they're unreasonable. I wouldn't say that they're aggressive. Perhaps they could be a bit more aggressive, but I'm more interested in actually getting something in place that works. Because the last thing we want is a system that creates issues and then has the kind of cash flow restrictions and dislocations, which could have an even bigger detrimental effect on our small businesses. Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, the motion calls for considering an amendment to the Banks and Trust Companies Law. As it stands, Madam Speaker, the government is happy to accept the motion in terms of a consider. We do not, the banks, the 6 clearing banks are working together to ensure that this mechanism and this platform is put in place. I don't think that at this point we have to be concerned to try to mandate this type of service. Madam Speaker, typically the banks and trust companies law is going to regulate the activities of the bank. It isn't going to dictate what activities the banks and the types of services the banks have to provide. But, Madam Speaker, if necessary, we can do that. And that is an option that we are willing to exercise if there is an unreasonable approach taken and this sort of mechanism is not put in place. So certainly we can still accept the potential for, notwithstanding the fact that we have this activity going on, we can still accept the potential for mandating if it becomes necessary to do this, and if the timelines that they've indicated and the progress and the types of services that the clearing banks have indicated, Madam Speaker, do not, for one reason or another, come to fruition. So, Madam Speaker, with that, I will say to the member that this motion, as he knows, is one that deals with an issue that the government has been concerned with, and I'm thankful that he has brought the motion to allow us to speak to it. And I am happy to have been able to outline what is being done at this point, but also to very clearly indicate that the government's position is this is a service and this is a reality that as a modern country, as a modern economy, our businesses, our economy, and our people deserve to have as well. And as a government, we will ensure that that happens. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you very much again, and happy to indicate to the member support for the motion.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Final call. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on a mover to exercise his right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Minister for responding and indicating that he does support the motion and for outlining his position on it. I know he acknowledged that, I might not have stated it in my original presentation, but he did acknowledge that this has been an ongoing discussion for quite a number of years now. And he did point out that I was combining two eventualities in my argument, which was the electronic clearing of checks and the electronic funds transfers, which the two, Madam Speaker, go hand in hand, and one actually paves the way for the other. As I stated in my original presentation, Madam Speaker, there is a significant investment required up front. I know that compared to years ago, solutions that we will be looking for have come down in costs, but there will still be some investment required. But I do know that the benefits will outweigh the costs over time. Excuse me, Madam Speaker. The Minister, Madam Speaker, recalled where I think we did have a discussion, and he had been told that a solution, or from what I recall, the solution would be in place by September gone. And that was part of the reason why I decided to bring this motion forward, because I'm not blaming the Minister, Madam Speaker, but I don't see the will to get this in place being displayed by the retail banks. And I must say, Madam Speaker, that I am concerned because there seems to be a bit of a disparity in how banks treat float nowadays, currently. And that indicates to me that some of the banks may be playing games with this. I know an individual who will deposit checks into their business account, payments from their customers, and have to wait 3-4 days for those checks to clear. But that same individual will pay his credit card at a bank with a personal check, and it clears within 24 hours. So the bank is making sure they get their funds. But his business account, Madam Speaker, is not getting the benefit of his funds. So I know there are some games being played. But Madam Speaker, and the reality is that business do struggle. And I know the minister said that, a good, a business that is operating properly shouldn't have to struggle as much as I may have illustrated, but I do know quite a number of businesses who would depend on these checks to clear to meet their operating costs and expenses. And these are the ones that we have to be concerned about, Madam Speaker, because it would be a shame to see some of them start to, or maybe some have failed, shut down operations because of liquidity issues that could have been prevented. And as the minister stated, Madam Speaker, the entire solution will allow person-to-person transactions, business-to-business transactions at different financial institutions, and that is probably one of the biggest selling points of a solution such as this. We know that most people now have debit cards, but those come with limits and fees that are probably, the fees are probably going to be higher than in time what you would be paying for an electronic transaction once the volumes pick up and the service is operating. Madam Speaker, I know that the Bankers Association seems to have indicated that they are willing to adopt electronic clearings. And I'm happy to hear from the minister that there's an MOU in place and that the banks are working together now. But I'm not so confident, which is why I asked the government to consider to make this mandatory by amending the law. Because I'm aware, Madam Speaker, that over 10 years ago, I think it was Cayman Wireless actually created a payment gateway solution that was designed to, 15 years ago, I'm being told. And that fell, by the way, and was not adopted and was not used. So the jurisdiction has suffered, Madam Speaker, I think unnecessarily. And when I think about the benefits that we have not been able to take advantage of, it really does worry me that if we allow this situation to persist, we will continue to suffer the same fate. So I'm all for making this mandatory. I think the time is now, as the minister said, for our people to be able to take advantage of these services. Many of us here have businesses. Many of us have constituents who have businesses, Madam Speaker, and we all see the benefit, and we can compare to other jurisdictions and see where we have fallen far behind. So I'm thankful to the minister for agreeing to accept the motion, and I also want to encourage everyone else to support the motion. I see this as a way of strengthening the jurisdiction and strengthening our banking infrastructure. Madam Speaker, I think it's been a long way coming, and I think we need to press ahead, as the minister stated, and ensure that this gets done. But I do still hold out that it's time to make it mandatory. So, Madam Speaker, with that, thank you, and I'll look forward to hopefully getting the support of this House.
The question is, be it therefore resolved that the government considers an amendment to the Banks and Trust Companies Law 2013 revision in order to require the use of electronic funds clearing and settlement by all Cayman Islands registered retail banks for the purpose of settling and clearing local interbank transactions. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. Accordingly, motion 26, 2015, 2016 is duly passed.
Private member motion number 27 of 2015-16. Motion on National Workforce Development Agency, mandatory job registration. To be moved by the fourth elected member from Bordentown.
I recognize the honourable member from Bordentown, the fourth elected member.
Madam Speaker, I would like to respectfully ask the leave of the House to actually move this motion to the next meeting.
The question is that motion 27 of 2015-2016 be deferred until the next meeting of this honourable House. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Motion 27, 2015-2016 is hereby deferred to the next meeting of the House.
Private member motion number 24 of 2015-16. Motion to establish a national energy policy and sustainable development goals and to reduce reliance on fossil fuel. To be moved by the fifth elected member for Georgetown.
Recognize the honourable fifth elected member from the District of Georgetown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to serve a notice of amendment to private member's motion number 24 of 2015-2016, entitled Motion to Establish a National Energy Policy and Sustainable Development Goals and to Reduce Reliance on Fossil Fuels, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 25-1. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Madam Speaker, in line with standing orders, I'll move the original motion first. Madam Speaker, I rise to propose a motion number 24 of 2015-2016, motion to establish a national energy policy and sustainable development goals and reduce reliance on fossil fuel. Whereas there is no fixed or accepted national energy policy or plan in the Cayman Islands, and whereas the Cayman Islands has international and regional obligations to reduce its carbon footprint, decrease its reliance on fossil fuel, and to increase its use of renewable energy. And whereas renewable energy technologies promote human development by stimulating economic development, mitigating climate change, contributing to energy security, and providing health benefits. Be it therefore resolved that government considers as a matter of urgency the introduction and passage into law of the National Energy Policy, which sets in place relevant Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, and the climate change goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Conference. 2, setting a renewable energy target of 30% by 2020, 50% by 2025, 75% by 2030, and 100% by 2035. 3, performing an independent energy audit on all government buildings to be tabled at the Legislative Assembly and consider replacing all lights with LED lights in each. Such work to be carried out by local companies. 4, installing the maximum number of solar panels on the Government Administration Building, the GAB. B, creating a solar-covered parking structure to cover the majority of the parking area at the GAB. C, installing a reasonable amount of electric charging stations at the GAB. And D, utilizing battery storage technology, which proves to be economical and allows for energy backup power while adding stability to the CUC grid. 5, aiming for 20% of all registered vehicles on the Cayman roads to be electric vehicles or hybrids by 2020. Reduce the import duty on A, electric motor vehicles from 15% to 5%, and B, hybrid motor vehicles to 7.5% for an initial period of 2 years, and thereafter consider the impact of such reductions and make adjustments up or down as per government policy and stated goals. 6, ensuring the appropriate solar power systems are provided to Caymanian households earning less than $15,000 CI dollars per annum to subsidize energy costs. 7, implementing a strategy on the importation and use of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, and compressed natural gas, CNG, as an alternative to propane, and introduction of CNG stations as an alternative to petrol stations. 8, creating further job opportunities and economic growth by ensuring that those able-bodied persons on social assistance and clients of the NWDA, students, and other interested parties be given access to programs such as the UCCI Solar Training Program in solar installation and ancillary services to support the renewable energy jobs created. 9, recognizing one association as the professional association of the renewable energy industry to set standards and liaise with government, NGOs, and industry, whose membership should include a member of government, and that any work done on government projects are done by members of the association. 10, signing up for the 10 Island Challenge by the Carbon War Room. 11, setting a long-term strategy advised by the ERA for the Consumer-Owned Renewable Energy Program, or CORE, that is part of a sustainable development plan for the economic benefit of energy consumers, which is communicated to all persons on the Cayman Islands, but especially for new buildings. And 12, establishing a sustainable development policy for all new buildings in the Cayman Islands to be built in a more eco-friendly manner to ensure energy and cost savings and reduce greenhouse gas effects.
Is there a seconder to the motion?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
The motion has been duly moved. Does the mover wish to debate his motion?
Madam Speaker, I rise to give notice of amendment to motion 24 of 2015-2016.
Could we take an afternoon break now so that I can have an opportunity to see the amendment, because it has to be waived first before we can introduce it on the floor? We should be able to reconvene by 7.